Well, good morning. We've been talking this week about asmita, which is one of the kleshas. Kleshas are obstacles to practice, obstacles to sadhana, things that make our practice toward oneness or our practice toward wholeness, our practice toward the state of yoga. These are challenges or stumbling blocks that come along in our practice. And this one in particular is where the self is the stumbling block. Maybe we've all experienced that in some way or another. This asmita is often translated as ego or individual self, small s self versus the capital S self of the universal self. And it is also sometimes translated as I amness. We run into this as a stumbling block when we are highly attached to the ideas that begin with I am. So I am angry, I am sad, I am happy, I am whole, I am not whole, I prefer this, I don't prefer that, things like that. So these small s self-identifications or definitions, really what they do is keep us in a limitation. And what we're trying to do through yoga practice and our sadhana and our spiritual practice is to break past the boundaries of this small s self, this small I am, and ideally grow into or expand into this idea of the universal self or oneness with all. So anything that limits our existence to this personalized self can then be a stumbling block toward that wholeness. And just to kind of recap, so asmita is ego or individual self. Nishila Joy Devi calls asmita the undue trust in the individual self. And this is when we kind of feel like we know better, or I know better than the rest of the world, or I know better than this other person, kind of thing. And that, again, what it does is creates a limitation where we exist within this small definition box rather than opening up to seeing things in a different way. And a couple of the things that we can do to move past that boundary: first of all, we can engage our empathy to understand that our own personal experience of something might be or feel or be experienced differently than someone else's. So empathy is one way to kind of push past the boundary of the limited self. Another way is to, one of my favorite concepts from yoga is pratipaksha bhavanam. This idea to, when disquieting thoughts or feelings disrupt the chitta or the mind, to cultivate the opposite and elevated point of view. So we were just kind of talking about this, there's all these things going on. There's fires, there's pandemic, there's political unrest, there's all these things that are going on. And we could see that as a negative, and it does have its consequences, its challenging consequences. But we could also see this as an impetus for change. And it is difficult, especially when we're experiencing the effects of these disquieting thoughts and feelings more directly, to cultivate this elevated and opposite point of view. However, I think part of the key is in that word cultivate. It's not something that we just flip a light switch and all of a sudden we have this more open point of view. It's something that we work toward. Cultivate means we put a little work into it. And so what I'd like to do is bring us into some poses that help us do a couple of things. Number one, we want to stabilize. We want to find a groundedness or a consistency within. And then we also want to shift our perspective from what's happening out here to what's happening in here. And that might seem counterintuitive if we're trying to expand past the individual self. Why would we focus inward? But we'll kind of get to that as we practice. I hope you are able to just kind of feel that as we practice, why we would look inside. We also do, though, want to take and shift our perspective from what we're feeling inside to what's possible on the outside, to move past the limitations into greater possibility. And then we also want to then integrate that stillness and stability and observation into one experience of understanding. So we'll first begin by just doing a little sensory scan as to where our focus is and what we're doing with our focus. And then we'll start to move through some poses that bring or invite us into this space. So let's begin just in our seated shape. And We'll find that stability that comes in the pelvis as we find our comfortable seat. So we might shift around a little bit at first just to kind of find that stability, and then really ground and root into it. Find a sense of stabilization in the pelvis. Once we feel pretty rooted and established in that, let's also find that open heart so that we can at least imagine past the limitations and into a wider perspective. And once we have our stabilization and our openness in the heart, let's also lift and elevate the mind, reaching the crown of the head upward, keeping us in that higher mindset, that ability to see from a higher and broader perspective. So we have kind of our groundedness, our open feeling, open to feeling something different, and open to seeing from that past our limitations, or seeing from a point of view that is beyond our individual self. And just notice as we take this more intentional seated shape, how we open up that channel from root to crown. How the flow of energy as prana, as breath, as inspiration and ideas becomes more or less hindered in its flow through our bodies and our minds and our hearts. And then trying to keep a bit of this, these three elements, this stabilization, this consistency, this openness through our heart, and this elevation through the mind. Let's see if we can move, but still kind of keep an eye on those three elements. So as you take your next inhale, keep your heart open, but open it even more by lifting. The shoulders can fall back behind. Lift the chin to open our throat center, and notice how this also pushes the mind or elevates the mind even higher. And this is us sort of taking in the whole situation, moving beyond the vision from just our individual self into a deeper and broader vision of wholeness. Just taking a few breath cycles here in this shape, noticing how the breath flows differently, how prana or energy, life force, inspiration flows differently. Then on your next exhale, reverse that direction, chin towards the chest. See if even here as the head is lowered to look inward, if you can still find that lift and lengthening through the spine. And now the heart is still open, it's just the back of the heart that's open. And as we take a few breaths here, I'd love for us to just notice how, as we look inward, the back of the heart broadens as a natural response to this shape. And so the idea here is that looking inward doesn't just bring our focus inward, it also opens us up, even if it doesn't seem that way on the surface. Take a little study inward and see if you can notice the difference between the individual self that we're looking into and that broader openness that allows us to accept more than what we see inside, and beginning to see that wholeness within. Come back into your neutral spine. Just maybe take a breath or two or three here. Stabilized, open, and elevated. Hands can come down to the mat on either side, and we're going to take some sort of like hybrid lateral bends and some twisting. So as you inhale, let your right arm rise, just kind of reach up. So we're just lengthening and creating more tallness through the spine. And then as you exhale, lean to the left, maybe press the left hand into the floor to press that right side open a little bit more. Take a few breaths here. And again, even though the head is lowered as we lean, see if you can stay long and tall through the spine. Feel how as we lean to one side, the other side opens. So again, as we look inward, we find that broadening as a natural consequence. Turn the nose to look down towards the left hand. This is the beginning of the twist. We're finding it first in the neck. On your next exhale, let your right hand come down to your left knee and then straighten up the spine. Maybe even press into the left hand. Left hand might turn behind the body and maybe even kind of gently pull the heart a little more towards the left. So we still have our stabilization, our openness, and our elevated mind, but we've changed our perspective. And again, we were talking about how this is a necessary step for transformation, being open to a different perspective. Take 2 more breaths, each inhale lifting and opening a little bit more. And on that second exhale, come back to your neutral spine, hands alongside the body on the floor. Stable through the pelvis, open through the heart, elevated through the mind. Let's take those same steps on this side, inhaling the left arm up, pausing here to reach with the fingers and also trying to reach the crown of the head in that same direction. Then on your next exhale, lean to the right, press into the floor with the right hand, open the left side body. Feel that stabilization, the openness, and the elevation as we continue to lengthen the spine, even though it's curved instead of straight. Turn the nose down to look towards the right hand, the beginning of our twist. Just being able to visualize a different perspective. Next, exhale, left hand comes down to that right knee. Push into the right hand to lift and open, straighten up the spine, bring the right hand behind the body. Feel the whole body now in the twist and not just the neck. So our vision comes first. What we see comes first, and then we can start to transform the heart, meanwhile maintaining that stability in the pelvis. Couple more breaths here. Each inhale lifting and opening. Each exhale continuing to rely on that stabilization through the pelvis. Then on an exhale, untwisting the body, coming back to that neutral spine. Couple of breaths here, stable, open, and elevated. From here, we'll inhale to open the arms upward towards the sky. We might find that open cow shape in the heart again, so lifting the heart, lifting the chin, maybe even broadening the reach of the hands, just to kind of take in that broadness, that openness, and then maintaining that elevation by lifting through the crown. On your exhale, let your palms come down to the mat in front of you, roll up onto the knees, and we'll find a tabletop shape. So we're going to flow through a very simple vinyasa, but we'll take this vinyasa through the symbolism of this stabilization from looking within, from looking outside, and then integrating that stillness and observation. So in your tabletop, find your flat back just as we did seated, reaching upward or kind of outward through the crown, back through the tailbone, finding stabilization in the body. This is our neutral. We will find an optional plank position in this flow. If plank is not your jam, just come back into table when we do plank. So we're starting here in our table. And we're gonna tuck the toes underneath the body and just start to slowly press part of the way up into downward dog. So knees are still bent. Press into the palms, let your gaze shift inward towards the heart. So this is that looking within. And maybe we kind of drop one heel and then the other, start to warm up the backs of the legs to find the expansion that we need here. So we're taking this vinyasa extra slow at first here to warm up the body. Maybe legs come fully straight eventually. Feel as we look within that same openness at the back of the heart. That natural consequence of looking inward is to begin to see or be open to that more outward vision. Here's where we shift into plank, or optionally you can take that tabletop shape again, but find that same flat spine, lengthening through the crown and the tailbone. Pause here for about 3 to 5 breaths. If you're in plank rather than table, you can let your knees drop and we'll come down to the belly at the end of our breath cycles here. So just coming all the way flat. Let the chin rest on the mat, hands are still underneath the shoulders. On your inhale, press into the mat, start to lift and elevate the mind and open the heart. Hands might support here, or you can also choose to lift the hands in some fashion as well to rely a little bit more on core strength and the low back. So 3 to 5 breaths here. On your last exhale, come back down to chin resting on the mat, and we'll come back into our table. So our table and our plank pose are interchangeable through this. So if you want a little extra effort, you can also find plank here. Pause, neutralize the spine, find length. Neither forward nor back in the heart, but just neutral. From here, we'll move back into downward facing dog. Feel free to continue to work out the legs a little bit, but shift your focus, your visual focus, back inward towards the heart. And notice the natural opening at the back of the heart as we look inward. Another breath or two here before shifting into our stabilizing pose, which will either be table or plank. So making that shift, neutral spine, 3 to 5 breaths, as stable and still as you can. This is where we find that consistency. Knees might drop to bring our belly down to the mat, chin rests. Take a breath or so to find your neutral spine here. Then begin by elevating the mind and then opening the heart. So we find our back bend here. Again, hands might be supporting or they might be reaching out. 3 to 5 breaths. On your last exhale, release back down to neutral on the mat. Come back to your stabilizing pose, so either table or plank. Let's do one more round through our Vinyasa here. So toes tuck. And pressing up, we look inward. Back of the heart opens. Lengthen if you can, both through legs and arms. Feel the relationship of looking inward and the expansion of the heart. This might be taking the form of compassion or grace or patience. One more inhale and we'll shift to our stabilizing pose of either table or plank. Long neutral spine, as still as you can be, as consistent and stable as you can be. On your last exhale here, maybe drop knees first and come all the way to the belly. Take a breath or so to neutralize your spine. Chin is resting on the mat. Elevate the mind and open the heart. 3 to 5 breaths here. On your last exhale, come back to neutral. And since it's our last round, let's stop in table this time. So knees are on the mat, neutralize your spine, find that stability again. Just as a transitional pose, we'll step back into downward facing dog just for a moment, maybe just enough breaths to turn the gaze inward and feel that openness of the heart. And then both feet travel to the top of the mat to find forward fold, Uttanasana. Find the stabilization of the pelvis, transferring all the way down to the feet. And let there be that same inward gaze, so chin is dropped towards the chest. Back of the heart is open. Let's find our stabilization through a flat back. So this is taking the place of our plank or our table. Same spine, belly is neither dropped nor raised, heart is neutral, spine is long. Continue to work toward that lifting of the crown away from the pelvis. You can reach your arms up, or you can just hinge the torso up and then reach the arms up. Exhale, hands to heart center. So again, finding that same stability. Gently open the heart, gently lift the crown. So we have those same 3 elements. On an inhale, arms will rise and we'll lift through the heart and the chin. Arms can be wide here to take in that broad perspective. 2 or 3 breaths. Then on that last exhale, let's find our flat back again. So hands might be supporting you on blocks or thighs or shins. Lengthen, find that stabilization. On your exhale, look within. Find Uttanasana, chin to chest, back of the heart broad and open. Inhale, stabilize, neutral spine, flat back. For more challenge, raise your arms in line with your torso. For a little more support, press into the thighs or the shins. Then inhale to rise again. Arms can also come up. Heart is lifted, gaze is lifted, crown is reaching, arms are wide. This is the light outside the body, recognizing it out in the world, looking intentionally for places where things are good. Let's take this flow a couple more times. Exhale, find your flat back, stabilizing. Neither looking in or out, but just finding consistency. Couple of breaths. On an exhale, Uttanasana, looking within. Back of the heart is open. That same stabilization through feet and pelvis. One more round through this flow. Inhale, find your neutral. Arms either supporting or reaching. Inhale again, hinge up, open the heart, broaden the gaze, lift the gaze, continue to lift and open through the heart, lengthening through the crown. Last round, exhale, find your flat back, stabilize. And finally coming back to looking within, Uttanasana. Stabilizing through the legs and feet and pelvis, open through the back of the heart, lengthening the crown away from the pelvis and also turning the chin in towards the chest, looking inward, finding that same light we found in the world inside. And just as we gaze at the world and see partly what is not going well and partly what's going well, we find that same view inside as we look within. There are things we could work on or improve, but there's also beauty and light within us. From here, let the back of the heart that's open from looking inward pull you up. Let it lift your heart. Let it lift you into that neutral spine. Keep the heart open by bringing the shoulders back and elevate the crown. Same 3 principles: stabilization, openness, and elevation of the mind. So with both feet on the floor, we feel pretty stable. And then the world comes and tests us. So what we're gonna do is balance a little bit on one leg and see what we can do here. And again, anytime you fall out of your balance pose, just come back to it. So start to shift your weight into the right leg. Left toes just hover a little over the floor. Just pausing here, pressing into the right foot to lift and open the heart and the head. Notice the engagement of the core. There is effort here. Then start to bring your left foot somewhere on your right leg to find a tree pose. Continue pressing the floor away, and here's where we find our challenge. So we rise up through the hands, we lift through the crown, we open and lift the heart. Notice how leaning slightly backwards challenges our balance a little bit. Come back to a neutral spine. Let your left hand rest on your left hip. See if you can lean a little to the left with the right arm. So again, challenging our balance a little. Inhale, come back to neutral, both hands on the hips. Release your left foot from your right leg and step towards the back of your mat. So hands are on hips here, both legs are straight. kind of focus outward, so heart is just gently lifted, crown is still reaching up. Inhale as the arms rise, exhale, bend into the right knee, warrior one. In order to maintain our openness, our stability, and our elevation of the mind, we have to kind of have the commitment of the warrior. To lose and let go of the worrier within us and rise up and open into the warrior within us. Inhale, straighten the right leg. Exhale, find your flat back here. Hands might again rest on thigh, shin, or earth. You might also use blocks here. Lengthening. Feel how this different position kind of shifts the stretch or sensations of the pose. Then bending into the right knee, letting the hands come down to the floor. Drop the left knee behind you. And let's find our open heart and elevated mind again here. Inhale and lift the heart, lift the head. Hands might press against the floor to stabilize, or lift and open to find that broader perspective. So either way, we're getting the benefits of the pose. About 2 to 3 more breaths here. On your last exhale in this cycle, frame the right toes. Tucking the left ones, and then stepping forward again. Uttanasana, looking within, finding that stabilization through the pelvis, legs and feet, openness in the back of the heart, and pushing sort of the crown of the head away from the low body. Again, as we look within, we feel that expansion of the back of the heart. Let the back of the heart again lift and roll you back up to standing. So that openness allows us to rise. Hands at heart center, neutral in our stance. Stable, open, and elevated. Let's find that same flow on the other side. So shifting weight into the left foot, right foot just hovers. Toes just hovering a little over the mat. Push into the left foot and leg. Lift through the heart, lift through the mind. Then bring your right foot somewhere on your left leg to find your tree pose. Maintaining your stability as best you can, even under challenging situations. Let's find our open heart and back bend. So arms rise, heart lifts, gaze lifts, crown lifts. As you lean slightly back to create this openness, feel the challenge to your balance. Shift back to a neutral spine, right hand on the hip, right hip, and then lean to the left. Again, notice the balance challenge here. Coming back to neutral, both hands on the hips. We'll start to release the right foot from the left leg and step towards the back of the mat again. Shift your heart, hips, and eye gaze straight forward. Stabilize through your legs, feet, and pelvis. Inhale, arms reach up and maybe open. Exhale into the left knee. Warrior one. Exhale your worrying. And inhale to open into that warrior of consistency, of commitment, of being a maker of change. 2 more breaths. Then inhale to straighten the left leg. Exhale, find your flat back. Again, hands might support you here. For extra challenge, just like we did in our standing, you can also reach the arms straight forward if you want a little bit more challenge in this pose. Just make sure whatever variation you choose, you find that stability and consistency. Two more breath cycles here. Then on our exhale, we'll bend into the right knee, let the hands come down to the mat, dropping the right knee behind. Find your open heart and lift here. So again, gaze lifts, heart lifts, crown reaches up, hands might press in for stability or open for that broader perspective. About 3 to 4 more breaths. A little bit more humbled than our standing warrior. On your exhale, frame your left toes, tuck the right ones, and again, step forward, Uttanasana. Notice how looking inward towards the heart opens the back of the heart. Find that stability in the legs. Then let that open heart lift you back up, coming back to standing. Stable through pelvis and legs, open through the heart, elevated through the mind. We might use blocks here. We're going to turn towards the long edge of the mat to find our moon salutations. So just coming to standing in the center of the mat, facing your long edge, stable through the legs and feet, open through the heart, elevated through the mind, hands at heart center. On your inhale, arms reach up. On your exhale, lean to one side. Couple of breaths here. Stay long and elevated. Stay open through the heart by pulling your top shoulder back. Feel that sensation and challenge. Inhale back to center. Exhale, same pose on the other side. Inhale, center. Exhale, stepping a little wider. Arms are reaching straight up above the shoulders. As you exhale, we're going to bend at elbows and knees. Let's take this 5 times. So inhale, reach up. Exhale, bend at elbows and knees. Inhale, reach up. Exhale, bend, goddess. 3 more. On this last round of goddess, pause in your squat. Hands might come for support or stay raised. Then inhale to straighten the legs and the arms out at shoulder height. Twist your left foot to face long edges of the mat. Right toes face the top of the mat. Look over the right hand. Reach and find triangle. So right hand either on the leg or maybe on your block. If you can stay stable where your heart is hovered over your right leg, you can also come to the floor or the toes. Feel the lengthening, the stabilization, and that opening of the heart. One more breath, reach the left fingertips up. Exhale, swing down to frame the right toes, pivoting on the back toes. Left knee comes down. We're going to find a little twist here, so inhale to lift your heart. Maybe we press against the thigh. And then turn your gaze first to the right, then let your heart follow. Arms can be anywhere that stabilizes your pose. 3 more breaths in your twist. We'll transition with our gaze first again. So turn the head to face the left side of your mat. Bring both hands inside the right foot and find Skandasana. So leaning towards the right side, right knee is bent, left leg is extended long. Again, arms can be anywhere from stabilizing to opening to lengthening. One more inhale in Skandasana. Exhale, walk your hands to the left side of your mat. Find Skandasana on this side. Right leg extended, left knee bent. Arms again can be anywhere. We'll use our gaze as we find our lunge and twist. So turn the body again, pivoting on that back leg. Find your low lunge, right knee on the mat. Inhale first to lift the heart and head. Maybe hands press against the thigh. Turn your gaze to that left side of your mat. And then the heart. Arms can be anywhere that stabilizes you. 3 more breaths. Turning your gaze to the right. Bring both hands to frame your left toes. Let's come all the way up to a standing shape first. So right toes and heels space, long edges, left toes space the short edge of the mat. Inhale your arms out to shoulder height, gaze over the left hand. Exhale, reach, and then left hand comes to some kind of support, floor, thigh, shin, block. Just make sure that you're lengthening through the spine. Heart is open and you're grounding through both pelvis, legs, and feet. One more big breath in to expand the heart. Exhale, bend into the left knee. Inhale, press into the left foot to come back to standing. Adjust your feet. Arms are going to reach straight up above the shoulders again, and we'll take 5 of our goddess squats. So inhale to reach up straight. Exhale, bend arms and legs, goddess. 4 more. Inhale, reach. Exhale, squat. 2 more. On that last round again, we'll pause in our goddess squat. Recognizing that sometimes being really open and stable at the same time is challenging. So acknowledge that as you breathe. Notice your breath. See how smooth you can keep your breath here. Good. Inhale, straighten the legs and step the feet back together. Hands coming back to the heart. Find stability from the pelvis to the heels. Openness in the heart, elevation through the mind. Inhale, prayer hands reach up. Exhale, lean to one side. Keep that stability, openness, and length. Inhale back to center. Exhale, lean to the other side. Same thing, stable, open, elevated. Inhale back to center. Exhale, relax your hands down by your side. Just take a couple of breaths with your eyes closed, maybe even dropping chin to chest to gaze into the heart. Let's turn back towards the top of the mat. From here, let's reach up and open the heart, lifting the head. Maybe hands are wide again here, just 2 or 3 breaths. On our next exhale, we'll find that flat spine again, stable, so hands can rest on blocks, thighs, or shins. Lengthen through your spine. On your exhale, Uttanasana, chin to chest, looking into the heart, noticing the openness at the back body as the heart expands while we look inside. This is us finding compassion for the flawed self to enable us to imagine having compassion for the flawed world or for flawed loved ones, maybe even flawed strangers. Bending at the knees enough to bring the hands to the floor. Let's bend all the way through the knees to bring the sitting bones down to a seated position. Feet are out wide in front of us. Let's take a very brief deer twist to either side. So again, we'll begin our shift into transition by changing the gaze. So looking first to one side of the body with the gaze, then letting both knees fall into that same direction. Walk the hands around, and you can either stay upright here or drop to forearms. But we're just going to take 3 breaths, a short pose here. This might just be an experimentation in shifting the perspective. After your final breath in this pose, come back to neutral. Turn the gaze first, then the heart, then the knees. Take at least 1, maybe 2 breaths here in our neutral upright seat. Then gaze shifts to the other direction, then heart, then knees. Taking your deer twist on this side again. You can drop down, but we're just going to be here a short time. 3 breaths. Turning the gaze, then the heart, then the knees to come back to neutral. Take a breath or so here with our long flat spine. Let's take our forward and back motion. So as you inhale, lift the heart, lift the gaze. Feel stability in the hips, openness in the heart, elevation through the mind. Then reverse that direction, shin to chest, shoulders forward, back of the heart becomes broad. And from this cat shape in the spine, take a nice slow roll, maybe with the support of your arms, down to supine position. Take a moment to set your body up for a long, neutral spine supported by the floor. Knees might fall together. You can experiment with shapes or positions for the arms to keep the heart open. And see if you can kind of just stabilizing through the pelvis without moving the sacrum, kind of lift your head or kind of pull your head away from your tailbone on the mat. Then from here we can notice if there are any other motions that our body needs now that we found our neutral spine. Perhaps you would like to take a short bridge pose or a happy baby. Maybe you'd like to take a little moon bending against the floor here from moving the torso from side to side. So just notice if there is any way that your body is calling you to shift your perspective or shift your position. If nothing is coming to mind or your body's not signaling anything to you, feel free to come into your resting shape. So we have about a minute or two to experiment or find some movement. If that's not needed, you just get a couple of extra minutes in your resting shape. So as we've worked with our asmita or I amness this week, we've learned several things. One is that when we are too stuck in seeing just our own perspective, it limits the capital S self, the universal self, from manifesting within. We are not acknowledging the unlimited self. When we apply this rule to ourselves, we tend to also apply that same limitation to others. So just being mindful how that might affect our experience of the world. Stephen Cope has a quote that kind of works with this idea. He says, "I understood that the attachment to myself and my image was actually taking me away from myself, away from this wonderful opportunity to just sit, just breathe, just feel the warm animal of my body." So as you start to find your way, if you haven't already, into your resting pose, consider these questions. What can be sensed outside the self? What can be sensed within the self? What can be sensed or perceived at all? And who is the one sensing or perceiving? Our practice today kind of gives us an opportunity to watch how the individual self shows up everywhere and where that might be a limitation or a boxing in of the universal self. See if you can be fully present here in stillness and resting without crafting that experience through the lens of the individual self. See if you can kind of melt into the floor, melt into the space around you, melt into the ambient sounds and sensations of this moment. Connect to your oneness that is beyond the individual self. Simply experience your breath, experience the stillness, experience the movements of the world outside of your body, not as separate from you, but as a part of your wholeness experience. Moving beyond the limitation of the individual body, the individual mind, individual self, and into the experience of the wholeness or the collective body of all that is, the collective consciousness of all that is. Feel the world breathing you as you receive and let go of your breath. Just feel the hum of the Om within and all around you. Feel the simple joy of breath flowing through. Recognize the necessity of something from outside our breath flowing in to this imaginary boundary of the individual self, through that imaginary self and back out, that this individual self cannot exist without this life force passing through, connecting us to the outside and the inside, the whole self and the individual self, not as separate things, but as one thing. Feel the effortless alignment of your spine against the floor. How this could not happen without the support of the floor below you and the open space around you that allows your body to expand to receive breath. That the individual self is not the whole self. And just recognizing the joy of being who you are, flaws and all. And cultivating the ability to love the whole world, flaws and all. Feel those three principles embodied in you in this moment, that stability, consistency, the openness and expansive nature of the heart, the length of the spine, and that elevation of the mind, that broader perspective. And see if you can maintain those three principles as your breath flows into your fingertips and toes and head. See if you can feel that breath moving just past the very edges of your skin, the imagined boundaries of the body. Feel flow around, within, and through you. Maybe you start to find small movements in the body, even as you maintain that stability, that openness, and that elevation. Begin to slowly bring your body back into motion. Maybe a long or wide stretch. Maybe a coiling inward, that internal gaze. And start to take the steps that you need to come back to seated and no rush, just simply observing the movements of the individual self within the space of the wholeness, the whole self, the divine self. Maintain that stability, that openness, and that elevation as you slowly make your transition back to seated. And once you arrive in your seated pose, check in with those same three elements. An invitation to expand beyond the individual self and into our Satnam, our true nature, as wholeness, as oneness. In one hand is the individual self, one hand is the universal cosmic wholeness self. Bring those two things together, not through pressure, but just through connection, and then pull that unity into your heart center, acknowledging that our inner heart, our true essence, is that wholeness. Let the chin drop towards the chest again, turning the gaze inward to recognize this union within, this state of yoga that we put effort toward, that we cultivate with effort and intention. As we begin to acknowledge our whole self, we begin to see ourselves reflected in others, bringing love and compassion beyond our own limitation and into the broader world. Therefore, our practice becomes an act of service to self and to others, to all as one. Loka samasta sukhino Bhavantu. May all beings be happy, healthy, safe, and free. Namaste.